My car died on the highway shoulder. 30 minutes before my final exam. I had no ride. No time. And no plan. Then a motorcycle roared up beside me. A stranger lifted her visor and asked, "Need a lift?" I climbed on without knowing her name. Wind screamed past us as she drove faster than I'd ever gone. We made it with 2 minutes to spare. I never expected that ride would change my entire life. My name is Emma Whitfield, 24. A nursing student in Portland, Oregon. Chasing a career built on discipline, structure, and control. That morning, discipline meant nothing. Everything I had planned collapsed on the shoulder of ID4, and a stranger's motorcycle became my only hope. Her name was Alex Torres. She wore a scratched leather jacket and didn't ask questions before handing me a spare helmet. "Hold on tight," she said, and I wrapped my arms around a total stranger because I had no other choice left. We tore down the exit ramp so fast my stomach dropped, but somehow I trusted her completely. Instantly. Without reason. She dropped me at the nursing building's front steps. Engine still running. Morning light catching the dark shine of her eyes. "Thank you," I gasped. Breathless. Half from the ride and half from something I couldn't yet name. "Good luck on your test," she said, grinning. Then peeled away before I could even ask her last name. I aced the exam. But I spent the entire time thinking about the girl on the motorcycle instead of pharmacology. That evening I searched half of Portland's coffee shops hoping to spot that same battered black leather jacket again. I told myself it was gratitude. Nothing more. Just a thank you I owed a stranger who'd saved my morning. 3 days later. My car finally fixed. I drove past a small motorcycle repair shop and slammed on the brakes. There she was, wrench in hand, hair tied back, laughing at something a customer said. Utterly unaware I was watching, I parked before I could talk myself out of it, walked in, and said, "You saved my life last week." Alex looked up, oil-streaked and surprised, then smiled slowly. "The exam girl. I wondered if you'd survive it." "I passed," I said. "Because of you." She shrugged like it was nothing, but her ears turned faintly pink. I bought a coffee from the shop next door just to have an excuse to keep standing near her. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, and somehow those 20 minutes felt like the best part of my week. She asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime, as a thank you for not suing me for reckless driving. I said yes before my brain caught up with my mouth, surprised by how easily the word came out. That first dinner ran 4 hours long. Plates emptied. Coffee refilled twice. Neither of us wanting the night to end. Alex told me she'd grown up in a small Oregon logging town. Restless. Always fixing engines instead of following rules. I told her about nursing school. About wanting to help people the way no one had ever quite helped me. She listened like my words actually mattered. Leaning forward. Asking questions instead of waiting for her turn to talk. Walking to my car that night. Our hands brushed once, and neither of us pulled away for a long moment. I lay awake afterward, staring at my ceiling, replaying every second, confused by how much I wanted to see her again. I had dated men my whole life. Comfortable. Expected. Unremarkable. This felt like nothing I had ever known before. We started meeting for coffee every week, then twice a week. Our conversation stretching later into every single night. Alex texted me photos of sunsets from her garage roof, and I found myself smiling at my phone like a fool. One evening she taught me to ride her motorcycle in an empty parking lot. Her hand steady over mine on the handlebars. "You're a natural," she said, and I laughed. Terrified and thrilled, feeling more alive than I had in years. At dinner with my Aunt Linda that weekend, I mentioned a friend named Alex Torres, and my aunt went suddenly still. "Torres? Her mother isn't Carol Torres, is it?" "We were roommates at Oregon State 30 years ago," Aunt Linda said. The world felt impossibly small suddenly. Like fate had been quietly stitching our lives together long before that highway. I called Alex laughing about the coincidence, and she said her mother still talked about wild college days with Linda. Small world, Alex said, though something flickered briefly across her voice, like she wasn't entirely comfortable with the connection. I didn't understand yet why that mattered. Why a shared old friendship might complicate whatever was growing quietly between us. We started spending Sundays together, hiking the trails outside the city, our conversations turning slowly more personal, more honest. I haven't dated anyone in 2 years, Alex admitted one afternoon, staring out at the valley below us in silence. I wanted to ask why, but something in her expression told me the answer would come only when she was ready. Instead, I reached over and took her hand, and she let me, fingers curling around mine like she'd been waiting. Neither of us said the word girlfriend, but something had shifted. Something neither of us was ready to name aloud yet. I still had a boyfriend, Daniel Cho. Kind, steady man my parents adored. Someone I'd dated for almost 2 years. Daniel was safe, predictable, the exact shape of the future my parents had always quietly expected me to choose. I hadn't told him about Alex, hadn't told anyone, because I wasn't sure yet what there even was to tell. But every time Daniel kissed me goodnight, I found myself thinking of a different pair of hands entirely. Guilt sat heavy in my chest, unfamiliar and sharp, the first honest feeling I'd had in a long, careful relationship. One night Alex and I sat on her garage roof, passing a blanket back and forth against the cold Portland air. I like you, Emma, she said quietly, not looking at me. Like the words cost her more than I understood. My heart slammed against my ribs. I like you too, I whispered, and I don't know what to do about it. She turned to face me then, I searching mine for permission, and I gave it by leaning in first. Our first kiss tasted like cold night air and courage, gentle and certain, erasing every doubt I'd been carrying. I drove home that night crying, not from sadness, but from the terrifying relief of finally feeling something real. The next morning I broke things off with Daniel, unable to look him in the eye while lying by omission. He took it quietly, too quietly, saying only, I understand more than you think, Emma, which confused me deeply then. I didn't tell my parents why. I just said we'd grown apart, which felt true enough not to be a lie. My mother, Grace, sighed over the phone. He was good for you, Emma. Don't throw away something stable for nothing. I almost told her everything right then, but the words caught, tangled somewhere between fear and readiness I didn't yet have. Alex and I kept our relationship quiet at first, careful, savoring something that still felt too new and fragile to share. We spent weekends at her garage apartment, cooking badly, laughing loudly, learning each other in the small ordinary ways that matter. She showed me photos of her childhood, a scrappy girl who never quite fit the mold her small town expected. I left home at 18, she said. Some places don't leave room for people like us to breathe freely. I understood that fear differently than she did, having never had to fight for the right to simply exist openly. Slowly, carefully, I started to understand what it meant to love someone the world hadn't built space for yet. My best friend Priya noticed the change in me first. The lightness. The way I checked my phone constantly. Smiling. You're glowing, she said one lunch. Who is he? I hesitated, then said quietly. Her name is Alex. Priya blinked. Surprise. Then squeezed my hand. Okay. Tell me everything, she said, and relief flooded through my whole chest. Telling Priya felt like practice for a much harder conversation I knew was waiting somewhere down the road ahead. My father, Robert, was old-fashioned, a man who measured success by tradition, church attendance, and grandchildren he'd already half planned for. I dreaded the day he'd ask about Daniel again, expecting an update on a relationship I'd already quietly walked away from. 3 months into dating Alex, I still hadn't told my parents anything close to the truth about my life. Alex never pushed, never demanded I come out before I was ready, though I saw the patience cost her something. I'm not a secret forever, Emma, she said one night, voice careful. Not angry, just tired in a way that scared me. I know, I said, though I didn't know how to make that promise feel true or possible yet. My father called, insisting I bring someone nice to my cousin's wedding, still assuming Daniel was still that someone entirely. I panicked and told him I was seeing someone new, without saying who, buying myself time I badly needed. A boy from your program? He asked hopefully, and I let the silence answer a question I wasn't ready to. Alex watched me deflect that call, jaw tight, saying nothing until I hung up, guilt written plainly across my face. You don't have to protect me from your family, she said. You have to stop protecting your family from yourself. Her words landed hard, true in a way I resented immediately, 'cause she was right and I wasn't ready. At work, a coworker named Priya's roommate mentioned seeing me at a Pride event, and word started quietly spreading around campus. I felt exposed suddenly, like a door I hadn't chosen to open was slowly being pried apart by others. Daniel texted me out of nowhere. I saw you at Pride. I'm proud of you. I should tell you something too. We met for coffee. Awkward at first, until he said quietly, I've been in love with my best friend Marcus for years. I stared at him, stunned. You knew, I said slowly. That's why you weren't surprised when I left you. I recognized something in you, Daniel admitted, because I've spent my whole life hiding the exact same thing. We laughed then. Strange. Relieved laugh. Two people who had unknowingly protected each other from painful, unnecessary secrets. Tell your parents when you're ready, Daniel said. Not because the world is watching, but because you deserve peace. His honesty gave me courage. But courage alone doesn't erase decades of fear built quietly into a careful daughter. That weekend, Alex introduced me properly to her mother, Carol, who hugged me tightly like she already knew everything. Linda mentioned you, Carol said warmly. I'm glad my daughter finally found someone who makes her this happy again. The word again caught in my ears, and Alex's smile faltered slightly before she quickly changed the subject. Later that night I asked her gently what her mother meant, and Alex went quiet for a long time. Her name was Casey, Alex finally said. We were engaged. She died in a car accident 2 years ago. My breath caught. Suddenly her caution, her slow patience, her guarded heart made complete and painful sense to me. I stopped riding fast for a year after, Alex whispered. Then I met you. Stranded on the highway, and something woke up. I held her while she cried for the first time since I'd known her, finally understanding the weight she carried. I'm scared of losing someone again, she admitted. Scared of loving you and having the world take you too. I'm not going anywhere, I said, though I knew promises like that were the hardest ones to actually keep. That grief explained everything. Her guarded heart, her hesitance to rush, the fear behind her patient, careful love for me. I loved her more for the honesty, not less, understanding now that her patience had never been about doubting me. My father called again, more insistent this time, demanding I bring a partner to the family Christmas gathering that year. I decided, finally, it was time. I couldn't keep splitting my life into rooms Alex was never allowed inside. I want to bring Alex to Christmas, I told my mother first, my hands shaking as I said the words aloud. Silence stretched long on the phone before Grace said quietly, Your father won't understand this easily. Emma. Are you certain? I'm certain about Alex, I said. I just don't know if I'm certain about anything else in my life. My mother sighed. Then be certain about her first. The rest of us will catch up, one way or another. Her response wasn't rejection, but it wasn't full acceptance either. A careful middle ground that left me anxious and hopeful. I told Alex about Christmas, and she went quiet. Then said, "Are you sure you're ready for what comes next?" "No," I admitted honestly. "But I'm more sure of you than I've ever been sure of anything else." She kissed my forehead gently. "Then we'll face it together. I've survived worse rooms than one nervous Christmas dinner." 2 weeks before Christmas, Priya's roommate posted a photo from Pride online, tagging me without asking, without warning me first. My phone exploded with notifications, extended relatives commenting, questioning. Some kind, some cruel. None of it something I controlled. My father saw it before I ever got the chance to tell him myself. In my own words, my own time. He called immediately, voice cold and clipped. "Is this true, Emma? Or is this some kind of joke to you?" "It's true," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, heart hammering against my ribs like it might break. "I need time," he said, and hung up before I could say another single word to him in response. I sat on my bathroom floor and cried, not from shame, but from grief over a version of coming out I'd lost forever. Alex held me that night, saying nothing at first, just letting me feel everything without trying to fix it immediately. "This isn't how I wanted him to find out," I sobbed. "I wanted to choose the moment, choose the words myself." "I know," Alex said softly, "but he still knows now. That's the part that actually matters most." "Emma," Priya called, horrified, apologizing repeatedly for her roommate's carelessness, offering to fix something that honestly couldn't be fixed anymore. "It's not your fault," I told her, though part of me still felt raw and exposed in ways I hadn't chosen. At work the following week, my clinical supervisor pulled me aside, mentioning concerns from an anonymous complaint about my personal life. My stomach dropped. Nursing programs weren't supposed to care about who I loved, yet suddenly my career felt threatened too. "This is discrimination," Priya said furiously when I told her. Already pulling up the university's official non-discrimination policy online, I filed a complaint of my own, hands shaking, terrified but done letting fear decide every important choice for me. The university sided with me quickly, the anonymous complaint dismissed, but the fear it planted took much longer to fade. Alex showed up outside the clinical building that evening, helmet under her arm, waiting without asking me to explain anything. "I'm not going anywhere," she said again, echoing my own promise back to me from months before, steady and unshaken. My father didn't call for 3 weeks, the longest silence we'd ever shared in 24 years of my entire life. My mother called instead, quietly, saying, "He's not angry, Emma. He's grieving a picture of your future he built alone." "That picture was never real," I said. "It was his, not mine. I need him to understand that difference." "Give him time," my mother said gently. "Some people need longer to rebuild a house they didn't know was already falling." Christmas came and went without me there. The empty chair at that table heavier than any words could describe. Alex and I spent the holiday together instead, cooking a small dinner, choosing joy even while my chest still ached. "Family isn't only blood," she said, raising her glass. "Sometimes it's the people who show up anyway. Every single time." I toasted to that, tears mixing with laughter, grateful for a love that hadn't asked me to disappear for it. In January, my father's chest pain sent him to the emergency room, a scare that reshuffled everyone's priorities overnight instantly. I drove to the hospital immediately, fear erasing every ounce of the distance between us in an instant. He was stable. A minor cardiac event, but the fear on his face when I walked in surprised me completely. "You came," he said quietly, voice raw, like he hadn't expected me to after everything left unsaid between us. "Of course I came," I said. "You're my father." That doesn't stop being true no matter what else changes. We sat in silence for a long while, machines beeping steadily, neither of us ready yet for the harder conversation. Finally he said, "I don't understand it, Emma. But I don't want to lose you over something I don't understand." "You won't lose me," I said. "Unless you choose to. That part has always been up to you, not me." He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes for the first time I could remember since my grandmother's funeral years earlier. "Tell me about her," he said finally, and something in my chest loosened that had been tight for months. I told him about the motorcycle, the exam, the grot, the slow unfolding of a love I hadn't planned for. He listened. Really listen. The way Alex had taught me listening could actually look like when it mattered most. "She sounds brave," he admitted quietly. "Braver than I've been. Apparently. About a lot of things in my own life." That night my mother called me aside privately, her voice trembling with something I hadn't heard from her before. "I need to tell you something," Grace said. "My sister, your Aunt Rosalind, was gay. She died believing she had to hide it." I froze, stunned. I had never even known I had an Aunt Rosalind, erased quietly from every family conversation growing up. "She loved a woman named June for 30 years, my mother said. "We called her a roommate. We all lied together." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" asked. Grief and anger tangled together in a question I could barely finish. "Because I was ashamed of my own silence," my mother admitted. "I watched her hide. And I never once said enough." "I won't make that mistake with you," she said, gripping my hand tightly. "I won't let you disappear the way she did." I cried harder than I had in months, grieving an aunt I'd never known, grateful for a mother finally choosing differently. My mother met Alex for coffee the following week, quiet and careful at first, then warmer as the hour passed. "You make my daughter brave," Grace told her. "That's rarer than you probably know." "Thank you for that. Truly." Alex, usually so composed, teared up slightly, thanking her back for a welcome she hadn't expected to receive so soon. My father took longer, but he started texting small things, articles about heart-healthy diets. Joke. Nothing about Alex directly yet. Then one Sunday he asked, hesitant, "Would you and Alex like to come for dinner?" "Nothing fancy. Just family." I nearly dropped my phone, reading the message 3 times before I trusted it was actually real and not imagined. Alex squeezed my hand when I told her. "See? People can surprise you, even the ones you're most afraid of." We drove to my parents' house together, my hand sweating on the steering wheel the entire quiet way there. My father opened the door. Awkward. Formal. But he extended his hand to Alex and said, "Welcome, Alex. Come in." Dinner was stiff at first, careful small talk. But slowly the tension eased as stories and laughter began to flow. My father asked Alex about the motorcycle shop, genuinely curious, and she lit up describing engines like poetry to him. By dessert, he was laughing at one of her jokes, and something in my chest finally, fully unclenched completely. Later, alone in the kitchen, my father said quietly, "I'm sorry it took me this long, Emma. I'm trying now." "That's all I ever needed," I said, hugging him, feeling 24 years of careful distance begin to close at last. Spring came, and with it, Alex's motorcycle shop began struggling financially, an old landlord threatening to triple the rent overnight. "I might have to close," she admitted one night, exhausted. The fear of losing her livelihood etched across her face. I watched her build spreadsheets at midnight, calling every regular customer, refusing to let years of work disappear quietly. Aunt Linda, hearing about it through my mother, offered to invest, calling it long overdue payback for old college favors. "Carol saved my marriage once with terrible advice and good wine," Linda laughed. "Let me save her daughter's garage now." With Linda's investment and a wave of new customers from the community, The shop survived. Stronger than it had been before. Alex hung a small photo of Casey by the register. Not hidden anymore. Honoring the past instead of running from it. I used to think loving you meant betraying her memory, Alex told me. Now I think she'd be glad I'm happy. I kissed her gently, understanding finally that love doesn't erase grief. It simply makes room for both to exist together. That summer, Priya asked me to speak at the university's LGBTQ student support panel about navigating nursing school authentically, openly. I hesitated, then said yes. Remembering every silent version of myself I'd carried before finally choosing honesty over comfort. Standing at that podium, I saw my mother in the audience. Then, surprisingly, my father slipping quietly into a back seat. My name is Emma Whitfield, I began. And 2 years ago, a stranger on a motorcycle saved more than my exam. I told the whole room about fear, about family, about Aunt Rosalind, about learning that hiding costs more than courage ever does. Afterward, a young student approached me, eyes wet. "How did you tell your parents?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Badly." "First," I admitted, laughing softly. "But badly is still better than never telling them anything at all." My father found me after, hugging me tightly in front of everyone, no longer caring who saw or what they thought. "I'm proud of you," he said. The words I'd waited 24 years to hear finally spoken plainly, and without hesitation. That fall, Alex proposed on the same highway shoulder where we'd first met. Motorcycle parked. Ring box trembling in her hand. "You saved my life twice," she said. "Once on that road. And once when you let me love you fully." I said yes before she even finished the question. Laughing and crying at once. Exactly like that first night we met. My father walked me down the aisle the following spring. Tears openly falling. No longer the man who'd once stayed silent. My mother sat in the front row beside a framed photo of Aunt Rosalind. Finally. Publicly. Honored instead of hidden away. Daniel came too. Hand in hand with Marcus. Both of them finally free of the secrets that had once bound them. Priya stood beside me as my maid of honor. The friend who'd never once flinched when I finally told her truth. Carol cried through the entire ceremony, whispering to my mother that Casey would have loved seeing Alex this happy again. We wrote our own vows. Simple and honest. Promising each other exactly what that first ride had already quietly promised. "You picked me up when I was stranded," I said. "And you never once let go. Even when it was hard. You taught me that love after loss isn't betrayal," Alex said. "It's proof that the heart can heal and open again." We rode away from our own wedding on her motorcycle. My white dress flying. Laughter echoing down the same highway. My father waved from the roadside. The very spot where a stranger had once changed the direction of my entire life. Years later, I still keep that spare helmet Alex handed me that first frantic morning. Cracked and faded but treasured. We opened a second motorcycle shop together. Emma and Alex's. With a small plaque inside dedicated quietly to Aunt Rosalind. My father visits every week now. Tinkering with engines beside Alex. The two of them closer than I ever imagined. Some nights I still think about how close I came to never stopping. Never noticing the girl on that motorcycle. Love, I've learned, rarely arrives the way you expect. Sometimes it arrives fast, loud, and covered in road dust. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't passing an exam. It was choosing honesty over the comfortable lie of hiding. I used to think being late for that test was the worst thing that could happen to me that day. It turned out to be the exact moment my real life, finally, truly, fearlessly began. Andy.